Undeniably, the pace of learning remains constant. It is based on how students learn differently as they age, grow, and mature socially, emotionally, and cognitively. And today, I welcome you all and let us know the involvement of brain-based education in the learning process. So, what is the brain-based education? According to study, brain-based education is a comprehensive instructional approach that is based on motion. If the brain is functioning properly and how it will able to carry out its normal process of learning. We have this traditional learning environment where the teacher delivers knowledge to the student in person without any third-party medium. For example, we have classroom desks arranged in rows. However, pictures controlling of learning can sometimes discourage or impede students' learning process. The brain natural process involves brain-based education efforts, such as disseminating findings from the brain science in the form of basic summary principles that are arranged to be accessible to educators. According to prominent advocates in brain-based education, Kane and Kane 1997 considered curriculum and instruction from a brain-based approach. They begin with the brain-mind learning principles derived from brain research findings and apply these principles in the classroom and in designing curriculum, in which he deduced 12 principles from a brain science that holds strong implications for education and that can be linked to specific educational practices. And these are: the first principle is the brain is a whole system and includes physiology, emotions, imagination, and predisposition. This must be all considered as a whole because brain performs many functions simultaneously, may it be in thoughts, emotions, imaginations, and operate concurrently. They interact with others such as health, maintenance, and the expansion of general social and cultural knowledge. Teachers need a frame of reference to enable them to select from a vast array of methods and approaches that are available. That is because this leads to a good teaching which should orchestrate all dimensions of the brain. Next principle we have, the brain develops in relationship to interactions with the environment and with others, like the heart, liver, or lungs. The brain is a complex physiological organs, functioning accordingly to physiological modes. Learning is natural as breathing, and it is possible to either inhabit or facilitate it. During growth, nourishment, and happiness. Stress and threat affects the brain. The actual writing of the brain is affected by school and life experiences. Anything that affects our physiological functioning affects our capacity to learn. Brain-based teaching must fully incorporate stress management, nutrition, exercise, drug addiction, and other facts of health into the learning process. The third principle is a quality of being human is the search for personal meaning. Making sense of our personal experiences is survival-oriented and basic to the human needs. The brain automatically registers the familiar while searching for novel stimuli. People are meaning makers. The implication for education of this brain, based on education, must for niche a learning environment that provides familiarity and stability. Educators should be able to satisfy the brain animal's curiosity and hunger for novel discovery and challenge. The fourth principle is people create meaning through perceiving certain patterns of understanding. The brain is both scientist and attempting to discern and understand patterns as they occur, in giving expression to unique and creative pattern of its own learners. The implication for education of this is that teachers should not stop learners from part-timing, but they can influence the direction teachers should provide learners with problem-solving and critical thinking skills. The fifth principle is emotions are critical to the people to perceive. So emotions and cognitive cannot be separated. Emotions are crucial to memory because they facilitate the storage and recall all of the information based on what they have learned, influenced and organized by emotions and mindsets, involving expectancy, personal biases, and the need for social interaction. So the implication for education is that teachers should make sure of the emotional climate is supportive and marked by mutual respect and acceptance. The cooperative approaches to learning support this notion, and metacognitive approach should be encouraged. Next principle is the brain processes information into both parts and wholes at the same time. There are differences between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. The value of the two-brained brain is that it requires educators to acknowledge the brain separate but stimulate simultaneous. Tendency for organizing information. One is to reduce such information in two parts. The other is to perceive and work whether it is a whole or service of the application for education of this principle. It is good in teaching builds understanding and skills over time because it recognizes the learning is cumulative and developmental. Teachers should have to know that vocabulary and grammar are best understood and mastered when they are incorporated in genuine whole language experiences. Seventh principle is learning includes both focused attention and peripheral input. Our brain absorbs the information of which it is directly aware and to which it is paying attention. It also absorbs information and signals that lie behind the immediate focus of attention. Peripheral perception is that the brain responds to the entire sensory context in which teaching or communication occurs. For example, we have changes in body postures. Our inner states show in skin color, muscular tension in posture, rate of breathing, eye movement, and so on. Peripheral information can be organized to facilitate learning. The implication for education of this principle is that the teacher should organize the materials that will be outside the focus of the learner's attention, and also teachers should engage the interest and the enthusiasm of students, but their own enthusiasm, culturing, and modeling. The eighth principle is learning is both conscious and unconscious. We learn much more than we ever consciously understand, and we remember that we experience not just we are told having reached the brain. This information emerges in the consciousness with some delay or it influences motives and decisions. A student can easily learn to sing and see and learn to hate singing at the same time. The implication for education of this principle is that teaching should be designed to help students benefit maximally from unconscious processing, which allows students to review how and what they learn so they can be responsible for the learning and development of their own personal meaning. Teacher should deliver his student to weigh, reflection, and metacognitive strategies. Ninth principle is information, meaningful and fragmented, is organized differently in memory. Remembering what we had for dinner last night doesn't require the use of memorization. We have natural spatial memory that does not require rehearsal and allows for instant memory of experiences. This memory registers our experiences. The system is always engaged and inexhaustible and enriched over time. The system is motivated by novelty. In fact, this is one of the systems that derive the search for meaning. The information and skills are separated from prior knowledge and actual experiences. The more we depend on rote memory and repetition, concentrating too heavily on storage and recall and unconnected facts is a very inefficient use of the brain. The implication for education of this principle is that education are adept at focusing on memorization of facts, for example, multiplication table, spelling, and set of principles in different subjects. Tenth principle is learning is developmental. Some believe that learning leads to development, whereas other contend that development leads to learning. Learning awakens the developmental process through social interaction with peers and teachers in such a way that it would not occur if the child were in isolation. Learning development describes work with students and staff to develop academic practices with a focus on students' development. Developing academic practices in higher education which assess the progress of knowledge acquired by means of structural. The next principle is the brain makes optimal number of connections in supportive but challenging environment perceptions of great threat inhibiting learning. The brain learns optimally when appropriately challenged and downshifts under perceived threat. The brain is most sensitive to stress and their perception literally lose access to portion of our brain. It has a physiological explanation and the implication for education. And the last principle is every brain is unique in its organization. In its organization, each brain is unique. Although we have the same set of systems including our senses and basic emotions, they are integrated differently in each and every brain. In addition, because learning changes the structure of the brain, the more we learn, the more unique we become. The implication for education of this principle is that teaching should be multi-facilitated in order to allow all students to express the visual, tactile, emotional, or auditory preferences, choices. It should also be viable enough to attract individual interest. Education needs the facility optimal brain, the level of brain based on education. And that's all the 12 principles of Kane. We have also other advocates of brain-based education. We have Resnick of 1987, theorized that learners learn more if they are given more several ways to look at the problem and if they are asked to give more than one way of solving it. Kane and Kane 1991 also cited studies showing that the brain learns best when it works to solve problems or accomplishes specific tasks instead merely absorbing isolated bits information, and that brain's primary function is to seek pattern in new learning. In addition, Sylvester of 1995 pointed out that the classrooms in the future may focus out on drawing existing abilities rather than on precisely measuring one's success with imposed skills, encouraging the personal construction of categorical systems and emphasizing the individual. Personal solutions of an environmental challenge offer the efficient group manipulation of the symbols that clearly represents the solution. Brain-based education has some direct applications in the development of curriculum. It postulates that the brain does not exist in isolation. The brain exists in bodies, which in return it exists in cultures, in which the culture happens to live becomes an important determination of the brain structure and organization. That is according to Gardner of 2000. This offers an immense possibility for including the social concerns and cultural matters in the curriculum. That's the end of my report. Thank you and God bless all.